Hi, this is Gary D. Tonnencourt from morethanasnapshot.com, and welcome to another week of critiques from my students. If you'd like to join my class, you can go to morethanasnapshot.com and get all the information and get signed up. All right, we have some great images again this week, and I think sort of the theme of this week is craft and vision, and where we all fit in the spectrum of learning digital photography. Um, when you first start out, I believe that you really should focus on just trying to make good compositions and trying to make interesting pictures and learn the technical details as you go along. But those technical details are very important, like learning your camera very well, knowing what button to hit in what situation, knowing how to set the right exposure, knowing how to get the image in sharp focus. All of those things are what you should be practicing on a regular basis. Just go out in your yard every week, at least once a week, and practice shooting plants and insects and whatever you have available, just so you stay familiar with your camera. Try learning one new function a week, and it's going to really pay off when you're in that excited situation of finding a good subject. And so we have lots of those students in this class that are just getting started and really trying to master those technical details. And then we have some other students who are a little bit advanced. They sort of have mastered those technical details and are really need to focus on the vision and the art part of the photography. And I think with this image here, this is a good example of that. The exposure looks good, and we have a very interesting couple of subjects here, bright and colorful, and it makes for a very interesting photo, and this is a very good job. Now, if we had to look for some technical things, I think it's done well just the way it is, but I think maybe the crop is a little bit tight on the sides. Maybe have a little bit more breathing room on the sides. And if we were to zoom in and look at the sharpness, it seems to be very sharp here at the feet. And as we come up, I don't know, the head on this bird seems to be sharp, but this area right here, this bird is not as sharp. I don't know if the bird moved or if you didn't quite have enough depth of field, but this section right here is not quite as sharp. Also, as far as the background goes, there is a little bit of distraction in the background. We can see back here that there are some sticks. There is this stick here. You have to deal with what you're given. When you're in this situation, you could try to find a different angle where the background's a little cleaner. If that doesn't work, then you have to try some other tricks. You could use the paintbrush tool and try to darken some of those areas. Let me see if I'll just do a quick job of trying to just darken some of those background areas so there's less attention called to them. I didn't really want to get the stick, but that's okay. I'm just doing a very rough, quick job so we can see a little bit less distraction there. So you get the idea. And now it gives us the opportunity to pay much more attention to the birds, the main subject. Alright, so that's just a quick and dirty, making those objects that would catch our eye a bit darker. And so it's a good image. Good job. Here is another example of an image that is technically very well done. You can see that this photographer has a lot of skill in lighting. They lit their face and their hand. and a lot of skill in Photoshop with the combining all these elements. I believe he said this was 3 images put together. And this is an image that I think I've critiqued before, and I liked it then, and I still like it now. Like I said, it's very well done. I think it's very sort of long, having a great distance between the subject's face and the bulb. But that's all right. It works for this image. It's good. I think on a lighting note, what I'm just realizing that would help this, though, is the lighting looks great on your face, but you're wearing a black shirt and you have a black background, so there's no separation between your arm and the background. So here's where a kicker light in the back would give you a little rim light on your arm or on the shirt, and that would separate your arm from the background. Now, on the artistic side of things, you got to wonder, all right, what's going on here? If you were to submit this to a fine art group, they would say, okay, what's the story? What's the purpose? What's the, how is this image supposed to make me feel? Those kinds of things. And I don't know what the story or feeling is. We have a guy maybe with some magic, and he's lighting a bulb, and it's interesting and it's fun, so that's good. This sort of thing happened to me once. I was in this fine art photography group, and I was experimenting with a levitation, and so I submitted this image that kind of looked cool, and they all said, well, what was your motivation? How are we supposed to feel? And I said, well, to be honest, I didn't really have a motivation. I was trying to make a cool levitation image, and I really wasn't thinking about the storyline. So not that this image doesn't have a storyline. I'm just saying that I'm not quite sure what you're trying to convey. You're transmitting your ideas to this bulb. It's just, whatever it may be, it looks cool anyway. Now this one I find very cool. The stars and stripes with the blurred motion, it really catches your attention. And I'm guessing that this is shadows of people maybe in the front. I'm not quite sure what that is. If there's one distracting thing, I would say it's that. And that we have sort of a large black band here at the bottom with nothing going on. So you might want to consider possibly cropping off some of that at the bottom. A little bit might be all right. And now it's just not quite so heavy at the bottom. But I like the creativity. I like what you were going for here, and I really do think this one, tells a very patriotic message. So I think this one succeeds in the storytelling, in the feeling category. Yeah, so I like this one a lot. Here we have another one that is very artsy and very creative and also very well done. And again, was this just like my story? We just, maybe you were just experimenting, creating a levitation image, or are you telling a story here? To me, I am getting a story out of this image. It may not be the same story as other people are getting, but I'm getting maybe a story of death. This stone area looks sort of like a mausoleum, and you're sort of floating lifeless. So I'm getting the idea of death and maybe floating up to heaven. And I think that photographically and Photoshop-wise, it looks like you did a really good job on it. And if I were to say anything else about it, I would say it's like a piece that may not be quite finished. I think this is one type of picture that you could continue to work on in Photoshop and really take to deeper levels. Like you could add, since it seems like it's a death-related photo, you could really add some grungy texture and really darken down the background. Maybe you could add some rays of light coming down on the dead person. You can really go sort of crazy with this image in Photoshop, and I think it would be worth exploring. And I think I know you mentioned in one of your posts that there's no shadow on the ground. That would be something that would also help. So I think that it is a great and creative idea that you had here, and I think it's well done. And I think it's just not done. I think you should continue to experiment with it and, try to add some more Photoshopped effects to it. Here we have a student that just got a new lens. I believe she said 55 to 300 millimeter lens. And she was probably testing it out at the zoo. And I think she got some very nice results. Here in this image, what I like about it is that you captured something happening. A little bit of action. Even, it's got an itch and it's scratching. There is a little bit of overexposure in the white areas. Anytime there's white and sunlight, you always have to worry about that. You should, even if you have to take a security shot at, minus a third or 2/3 of a stop, just so you make sure you don't overexpose the highlights. Or if you're shooting in RAW, you can use the highlight slider here and get back that detail. Now it's not overexposed. The subject is very centered. Maybe having a crop where it's a little bit off center might be better. And we do have a large space down here at the bottom with empty grass. So I would try a crop, maybe something like that. And now we give the animal a little room on this side. Our eye has time to come into the picture and down. And we don't have quite so much space down there at the bottom. So, and it does appear to be sharp, and I think it's a good shot. Here we have a giraffe, and again some blown highlights. This time you can see it's not recovering them. We've lost detail in this area. So again, when you're shooting in the sun and you have some white in your subject, make sure you take some extra shots that are at a lower exposure. And I think the problem with this shot is it needs to be cropped. There's a lot of wasted space around the edges here. So I would crop down. And try to find a composition, maybe something like that. Now the other problem you can see is there's a lot of thorns, and I don't know if that's part of the tree itself, but there's a lot of things covering the face of the giraffe. So I think that's a bit of a distraction. Also, we can see here, now that we're a little bit zoomed in, there's another giraffe behind this giraffe. So it almost looks like this head could be on this giraffe. So that would be a merger. That would be a bit of a problem. Here we have a nice bird on a perch, and this time I think that the background is clearer around the bird itself, so that looks good. I think we do have too much around here. In other words, it could be cropped tighter. So I'll crop that in a bit. And that will also help us get rid of some of these bright leaves that are overexposed. So I might try something like that. And then I'll use the highlight recovery tool to get rid of that. But that's really bringing down everything else too much. So I think I'll use the brush and just brush in that spot that's overexposed. And maybe get a new brush and make the bird a little bit brighter, especially in the face. And not that much, just a little bit brighter. And take the highlights down. Alright. Now, the other problem is that there is quite a bit of noise in the background here. And it's not giving us the EXIF data to see what ISO it was shot at, but it does look like this bird was in the shade, so you probably had to have a much higher ISO. And, you know, sometimes it's necessary just to get to the shot, but you can definitely see some noise here. So you might want to try a noise reduction tool, like the one in Lightroom or in a plugin or in Photoshop, and that will smooth out some of that noise. Just don't go too crazy with it. It'll take away all the detail in the bird. Alright. Alright, this one, there's just a little bit of overexposure. So, again, we'll just use the highlight tool, take some of that down. Looks like you captured them doing something, which is good. But it's I'm not liking seeing the chain link fence, but you know what? When you shoot in a zoo, you have to deal with those things. Composition, I guess it looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit much on the top. Alright. And I think it needs to probably be a bit brighter in their faces, so we could do a mid-tone adjustment that way, or I could use the shadow slider to bring that up a bit. And then I'll bring down the blacks just a little bit, and then I'll bring in the highlights a bit more. And the before and after. I just wanted to see a little bit more of their faces, a little bit brighter in this sort of darker area here. And I probably would use the brush tool and darken all of that chain link fence. And there's some specular highlights back there that could use to be darkened as well. Right there. Of course, you would take your time and do that right. And so now the fence and the highlights behind them are a bit less noticeable. Maybe not quite that dark, but... And again, the before and after. Here we have a rhino. I like this one. We can't tell if this one is in a zoo as much, and I like the tones on the rhino itself, the different tones of brown and rust. And the rhino does have a little bit of space here to come into the picture. And there's a tiny bit of overexposure, but not bad. We can just take that in with the highlight slider. Maybe bring up the shadows just a little bit. And I would crop this one a bit too, to not have probably the blue in the sky. Maybe something like that. But if you liked having more room on the left, it was okay to go with that too. I think this one is probably my favorite of the bunch. You caught an interesting subject, and it appears to be nice and sharp. There's a little bit of overexposure. Again, when the animal's got white on it, you have to really protect the highlights. I would do a little bit of noise reduction. This one doesn't need quite as much, but it does need some. Bring up the detail a little bit more. And that's a bit cleaner. There is sort of a white band here, so again I might use the brush tool just to help darken the background a little bit. Just doing it quick. That's a really bad job, but at least you can see that with the background a bit darker. And again, it doesn't need to be full strength, but something like that. And now I might make a new brush and make the face possibly a little bit brighter in this section. Oops. Especially around the eye and maybe a little bit down the beak. Oops, that's terrible. I'll have to use the eraser tool and get rid of that. And then I might make that a bit more subtle on the brighter side there. And that's the before and after. But good job. I really like that picture. Now, when you shoot this sort of picture, you have a nice portrait of the bird. And if you keep working this subject, maybe you'll get the bird doing some interesting activity. Oftentimes with wildlife, we want to get the nature story. You know, get him eating something or doing something, and it makes the photo more interesting. Having the beak open is helping to make this photo more interesting. But again, if it was doing something else, even better. Alright, I'll take down the highlights just a little bit because the stripes were a little overexposed. I like it because you got the zebras in a nice straight line. Seems sort of unusual that they would be moving in a straight line like that, but it's a good capture that you got. This stick is bothering me, and I think you have a bit too much up there anyway, so I would come down and crop that. We probably don't even need the whole last zebra, so maybe something like that. And I might pick up the midtones a bit to brighten up this front zebra. And then I gotta bring in the highlights so that back zebra is not overexposed. And of course I might work with it with the brushes again, brightening up this one a little bit, maybe darkening this one a little bit. But good eye for seeing that. Alright, here we have a bird building a nest. It looks nice and sharp and the exposure looks good. And it's a colorful, interesting bird. It's doing something. We have a nature story, so I like that. I have to wonder, since the bird is vertical, if this might be better as a vertical. So I'll check it out. I'll take the crop tool, and there might be a lot of stuff on the sides that we really don't need. Something like that. I think I prefer that better, but it's up to you what you like. I think because the bird is vertical, leading to the big round nest, I think that this makes a better composition. This one I really like because you have a nice, vibrant subject that is in front of this blue background. So I think the two things work together well. You even have some clouds back there. I'm not sure if it would have been better to have it completely on this blue background, the red and the blue, and not have the white. But, you know, it's the way it was. And if you wanted completely blue, maybe you could have waited for the right time when the clouds were out of the way. But I think it's okay this way. One little technical problem is you chopped off some of the bottom flowers here, so watch your framing. And the flowers seem to be nice and sharp, and so that's good. You might want to check when you see a little, I don't know if you can see this on the video, but there's a little spot right there. That little spot could be a hole in the cloud, but I really don't think so. It really looks more like a dust spot on your sensor to me. So if you have a blower, you might want to blow off your image sensor. You have a little dust spot there. But the rest of the sensor seems pretty clean. I'm not seeing a whole lot of dust spots. I'm just seeing that one. So what you can do is use your spot removal tool and just click on that, and it will get rid of that little sensor spot. Let me go to... Try it again. I think I had it on clone instead of heal. I think heal will work better in this case. Yeah, it doesn't give us a rough edge. So that's good. Not only that, there is I'm trying to think of where it is. If I can find it, I'll show you. There is a tool here in Lightroom that will let you see the dust spots, and it makes it easier to find them, and I don't know if I have it turned off. Anyway, I'll have to find it and let you know where it is. It could just be... Well, it's not coming to me at the moment, but there is a mode that you can go into where it will show you where the dust spots are, and I'll find out where it is and I'll let you all know. Alright, here we have a butterfly coming to land on the flowers. I think in this one you have to ask, what is your subject? Is your subject the butterfly or is it the flowers? I think this is a pretty, it's a decent shot of the flowers, but if the purpose of the shot was the butterfly, I think you're too far away from the butterfly. And I think a lot of this background here is just, not adding to the story, and a lot of this top right corner is not adding to the story. So if it were cropped tighter for the flowers, whatever, or for the butterfly, certainly the more interesting stuff is over here. But there's not a ton of flowers here, and the butterfly's not quite in focus, so that doesn't really work that well either. But it's an okay shot. I just don't see the clarity of the story. Here we have, looks like crows on top of a chimney. Again, I'm not really getting the story. There is a cutoff of the feather here. This would be a problem. We can see like a power line coming through the back, so it's not a clean background. The exposure is not good. We don't see any detail in the birds themselves, and the sky is not particularly nice either. And I don't see any story. Maybe this bird is coming over to feed this bird. I mean, it's so dark we can't really see what's going on there. So, good effort, but it's just not telling a good story. Now this one I like better. I like the composition. I like how you're nice and tight on these flowers, and that the flowers have sort of colors that all sort of go well together. So I think composition-wise and sharpness-wise, you did a good job. The problem is the lighting wasn't very good on the flowers. They're kind of dark, and we can see a lot of noise from you having to shoot it at a high ISO. So you can see here there is a little bit of good lighting sort of coming through the flower here. So there's a little bit of decent lighting on this flower, and maybe even on this flower, but these are in such shadow. So what you might want to try is to bring with you a reflector, and if there's light coming in from this direction, to bounce it back in this direction. And if there's not enough light available, you want to bring an off-camera flash and, add light where there isn't any. But other than that, I think it's a nice image. And what else is, what it's nice about it is we've talked about this occasionally too before. The subject is nice. The colors in this flower are nice, and the flower is in really good shape. You can see it's not damaged by insects, and there are no bad spots in the flower, and that really helps an image. So I really think what this image needed was just better lighting. Here's a self-portrait that should have probably been in the show last week, and I think I missed it, but I wanted to put it in because I think it's really well done. It's very creative. The person is showing us that they are a chef and tells us about them. It's a cool looking background, and the exposure and sharpness and everything look good. If I had to comment on it, think of something to comment on it, it looks like it might have been cropped on the right side, and I don't know if there was a good reason for that, but it looks like you may have cropped it a little too tight on that side. But other than that, good job and welcome to the class. And that, I believe, is the last image. So I hope you learned something this week and that you keep submitting images. And just remember, if anyone else would like to join the class, to come and sign up at morethanasnapshot.com. Thank you, and see you next week.